All right. Test. I think we're back. Ravi, can you give me a test in your mic?
Test. All right.
All right, guys. Well, if you caught the first segment, we were talking a little bit about, the power of agriculture. We're here in the agricultural capital of the world in the Central Valley. So we had the World Ag Expo just hit. And then we dived into a little bit about, being self-sufficient, right? And how that, those concepts, not only work with food, but energy as well. But as we talk about efficiencies, I think it would go, we wouldn't do anybody any justice if we didn't talk about the Doge team and the efficiencies that that they're attempting to bring to the United States as a whole. I just kind of wanted to get you guys' thoughts on that because obviously a lot of mixed feelings. And while almost every day it seems like we're being, there's reports on, look at all of this wasted money and look at all of this that we've identified, all of this savings. Others are saying, well, is this just an avenue or kind of the reason or the excuse to kind of steer us in a direction that, the Trump administration wants to steer us, right? So obviously a lot of feelings there towards there. But I'll kick it off with, one thing that I saw was with Social Security, right? That just rolled out yesterday, where there was an estimated 3 million people on the Social Security reports over the age of 120 years old, or between the age of 120 to 127 years old. There's an estimated 3 million people in the United States, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, are these people getting paid? And are they collecting a Social Security check?
Did they vote for Trump?
Are they voting? Right. So they're obviously on record or in acting as live people, and there seems to be like for me it's like who's collecting those checks? Who's earning those Social Security checks, right? And I can tell you that a lot of people are going to, if they choose to proceed, this is going to be a lot of people that are in trouble.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I can tell you, so I read that article. The parts that catch my attention, the 3 million and the money and the 100, all that, it's great. It's when you come to what's the resolution. And when they came to the idea of, well, can we make a program that just says after 120, we automatically assume you're dead? And the answer to that was, well, we have to look at law, and it's going to cost all this money to implement that. And coming from, like, when you look at somebody who's done like computer programming and all that kind of stuff, when people tell you, oh, it's going to cost millions to do this program, you're like, wait, it just takes a minute for some guy just to say, after the age of 120, you're dead. And
I can do something on Excel with
you know
my
what I mean?
mediocre
and then
skills.
you assume that out of the 3 million that are there, maybe one, and I doubt there is, because I think the oldest person's like 112 or something like that, they said, So maybe at some point there that one person that gets dead that is not, that you have to go to investigate and say like, hey, oh, by the way, we made a mistake, you're still alive.
Yeah.
But to say it's going to cost all these millions of dollars to fix that problem, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, no, you can, and you do it. But then they always, like I said, the last part is, oh, we have to see legally, can we do that? What law? You do it. You know what I mean? So it's weird how government can work like that,
So, and I think over these past couple of days, people have been trying to explain why the system shows that. And it's a software program that was developed in the 1950s, COBOL, right?
Yeah.
COBOL.
Yeah, it's a good program.
And that program, of course, recorded based on the last two digits of the year. So one can potentially say that in 1875, because that's how far back it goes, would be the same as 1975, which would make you 100 years old. And if you add another 25 years, then that's 150 years, right? So to your point, I think the program does cut off at 115. It's then.
Yeah.
But it's the rhetoric and this narrative again that, hey, your government is working. This is how Doge is working for you.
Sure.
Yes. Is there some efficiencies you can do? Yes, you can. But to that extent where you create this fear or this sensation that, yes, look what's happening. We
Yeah.
have all these people that are over 150 years old, and it's probably, they're going to demonize a certain sector of the population anyway. So they're going to say it's probably these people receiving it, right? And that's the sad thing about it, is that not having the facts out right and just reporting little bits of information. I think people gotten used to the idea of taking that in and saying that's true. Everything he says is true because it just makes sense. Well, have you researched it? Have you fact checked it? Have you done? By the way, I think fact checks are out. I mean, I'm surprisingly, Meta has removed their fact checking, which before was one of the reasons why Trump had a hard time with these people, these tech people, because they were fact checking his narratives, right? Is it true what you're saying? And a lot of people were able to tell, well, I mean, shit, this guy is really just throwing stuff out in the air and regurgitating stuff that he's heard. But frankly, how do you fact check that? Well, guess what? That's no longer available. I wonder why. And you start thinking about these things. It's like, well, is Doge really out there to really see that they're really making government more efficient? Or is it they're going to provide a narrative to say that, hey, this is where your money's been going. We need this money to go where now? All these inspector generals are being replaced. Their job and their duty is to find these cracks, to find who is abusing the government. And sometimes it may be the same people that are running these Doge programs now, right? Or that are administering. They may be the ones that could be potentially in some type of litigation suit that, hey, now let's make it disappear. We don't know that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, right now what we do know is that there's this Doge out there that's assisting and trying to make government more efficient, but how?
Yeah.
How? I mean, yes, you've already uncovered that these certain things shouldn't be in there. We're providing $2 million to this organization that really doesn't do any good. Well, good. But, I mean, is that really where the millions of dollars are going to?
Well,
Billions, by the way, not millions, billions.
But that's do we want that? Okay, so if it was a different administration enforcing this, accountability team, or this, going through everything with, efficiency team, would your feelings be a little bit different? Do you think that would change your?
I think the way that it's the narrative really that I have a problem
with.
Because
is it Trump that scares you? Because I'm being serious, right? Because you figure
it's not so much Trump, because Trump, in a way, I believe that is being, there's outside forces.
Yeah.
I mean, it's typical on any president. I don't care what president, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or what have you. You have outside forces influencing you to make a lot of these decisions. You're not alone in this. There's people out there that. And mainly it's people with a lot of power and wealth that can help. A little guy like me can't write a letter to Trump and say, hey, you need to make a change here with these particular things, because obviously I don't have that type of power and influence to help shape that. And even as a collective deal, it's really hard because it hasn't been done. The cries of half of the population hasn't been met. So typically it's who holds a lot of this wealth and money can have influence on how policies are made. So to your point, it's not that I have an issue with the president, it's the outside influences that typically aren't covered in the news media.
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, I say, but I think when you say he's removing these people, it's also a reminder to the average American who doesn't realize that most people who, and that's what they're uncovering, they have these government jobs, they're making $100,000 a year, but somehow their net worth is in the millions. Right, and you have this in politicians that have moved up, and you have these now that they're identifying as certain government employees that have somehow acquired millions in their values. When we see it at the presidential level, I mean, you see how these guys, the president makes $400,000 a year, and all of a sudden he serves 4 years, and now, like you look at the Obamas, and they have millions and millions of dollars in value, and you're like, wait a minute, but where did you get all your money from? You don't have a job. You make $400,000 a year, which typically those presidents actually donate to other things, so they don't even take that money. But how'd you make all this money? Oh, the books. You wrote books? No. It's most of those politicians, the politicians have written themselves out where they can actually invest without any penalties. They can inside trade without penalties. So that's when you say government efficiency. If it's removing the IG, maybe it's because they're identifying like, look, they're part of the problem. They're benefiting somehow, and they're not really looking at the cracks like you think they should.
So that's a good point. So do you really think, and history has taught us something about this, right? So do you think that the party that's looking to do this government efficiency is in the interest of the people? Or do you think they're in the interest for themselves?
I don't think the word party anymore makes any sense.
Exactly.
They're all playing the same. They're going to the same dinners and the same fields.
Exactly. So that's
it's
what I'm
called the
trying to get
rich
at.
and the poor.
So who is representing the people, the majority of the people? That's what I'm saying. Is
Yeah.
that typically it's one takeover of a party from another takeover that's out there for the interest of typically their interest. It's not the interest of the people. And yes, they'll use a narrative that this is where we need to go because
have
this is where your
zero
money.
interest.
But here's the thing, for example, and I'll just,
Yeah.
Department of Education, for example, right? How many people would be impacted that probably earn about $60,000 to $120,000, which is a core of a lot of the middle class people? Well, I don't even want to call it middle class, but think about that. You're going to go after these people that, dude, I mean, they get up every day. They have to put up with a lot of different type of students. I mean, granted that, there's controversy on what you're teaching children, but nevertheless, it's the education system in our country that could it be more efficient? I don't disagree with that, but look who you're going after. The Postal Service, maybe the next department. You're going after government jobs that a lot of these people depend on, right? And what is going to be the ultimate benefit? What do you want to do? What is happening that we're not looking at, this wool over our head? There's something taking place.
Yeah, there's a financial problem.
There may be a financial, but there's also a financial gain. This is where wealth is transferred.
It is.
Because if you look in the last decades, wealth in the lower, wealth has gone down for a lot of middle class Americans.
Yeah.
But yet, wealth has gone up for these top 10%. I'm not trying to dispute or argue that, people shouldn't make an effort to try to get better, but the data doesn't lie. It's telling you that, wait a minute, all these people that are supporting these people are losing money. But yet these people in these particular positions of government are gaining so much.
Yeah.
So where is the efficiency that's going to trickle down and maybe bring some of that back to the middle class?
If and that's why, like you said, who's fighting for what? If you're on one side, what Trump's doing is, he's giving the tax breaks to the rich. On the other side, they say they want to tax the rich and the wealthy, right? That was Biden's whole push. We're going to tax the wealthy, and that's how we're going to pay for things. If that was true, just take away all the tax deductions from the wealthy. See how quick politicians change their mind about tax increases and tax deductions. They you know what I mean? Because they don't pay their fair share. They say they do, but just like Trump was when he ran the first time, that was, Hillary tried to come after him and like, oh, you don't even pay your taxes. He's like, yeah, because I work the system. I know how to take the taxes off my properties. And he said, by the way, you're a person that does the same thing. We do the same thing. So that's when you say efficiencies. You can make these things happen. You can have that money if the wealthy were truly paying no tax deduction. There was nothing. You had to pay that 50% that the government says you have to pay. I guarantee they would change their pace.
Like I said, our representatives don't really, and I hate to say this, I can't afford a senator to represent my view. Millions and millions of dollars of these people in Congress are spent on them from only a small sector of these mega corporations, right? It's not Jose and Rohi that can put out $10 or their $20. I don't know how far that goes, but I do know that if such and such corporation gave me $50 million, this is a conundrum. It puts you in a position of you may have loyalty to that corporation than to the government and what you took an oath for, right? And it's about private property. It's about securing that wealth. I don't have it, so I can't buy you. I'm not saying, I can't say.
So what you're saying is there needs to be more political caps on how much money you can take in politically.
That's
maybe cap the presidential election. You can only take $1 million.
Because then truly you would then say that then maybe the government is or the Congress people are working for your people. But I don't think it was established that way early on with the founding fathers. I think when they created the Constitution, I think it was very clear. All men are created equal. It didn't include anybody else. And typically men said that all men probably referred to as people with property owners. Again, landowners.
Yeah.
These were investors that came from England that had charter colonies and had corporations that established a business setting. It happened with the Dutch. It happened with England. Now you're here at a colony and you're doing the same thing. You're expanding. I mean, the only way you can expand profitability is by, again, the laws of capitalism, right? Capital, raw materials, labor, and entrepreneurship. These intelligent people came out here and saw an opportunity, and here they are. Again, when they established that constitution, remember, a lot of them were slave owners.
Yeah.
They had the labor to grow that enterprise into what they wanted to do. That's why it says all men created equal. Didn't say anything else about anybody else. It didn't really reference anything. These were amendments done after the fact. But think about the position, their position at the time when the Constitution. Now, people may argue with me, but I'm just thinking if I was there because that's what we call them founding fathers,
Sure.
elite, wealthy individuals, landowner individuals. It wasn't the peasants. It wasn't the people, indentured servants. It wasn't the slaves that they were really considering. So what makes us think that we've really steered away from that and we've made progress? We've made progress, but then again, we revert back because this is what the initial principles were.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my thought. And it could be, I don't want to go too deep into it, but that's just my thought.
You know, I'm curious too, and I am skeptical as well. It's like, what is the end game, right? What is it that you're trying to achieve? What is it that you see that the rest of us don't, right? The wool over our eyes, as you put it earlier. And, you know, so when I just kind of assess and I just look at, okay, our presidency, the Trump administration, one thing that I actually see that's different with this administration is it's not like where you said it's always controlled by other people, right? And every president that I've seen come into office, it has been I always imagine they take him in this room and they say, hey, buddy, congratulations, but this is how things work. And this is how you need to operate. Otherwise, the world, you know, will go into chaos, right? And so, yes, we have aliens. You know, there's like all the secret stuff that they tell them, but then they say this is how it operates. No, we can't do that. No, we can't do this. Like, this is why. And so the difference that I see now is you have somebody who's coming in who has been in office already, and almost seems to have like this, you know, I'm going to make a name for myself attitude, and he's like determined to just get things done, right? I don't need to wait. I don't have time to waste. I don't need to be reelected. And so I guess if I'm going to be scared on anything, it's like, you know, I'm scared that, you know, he is just kind of running on his own. and it's almost like, you know, it can almost be looked at like as a like dictatorship in the making, right? Like, are you trying to have so much power where you know, in 3.5 years you say, oh, by the way, there's no more election. Like, I'm just here, right? I'm your president forever. Don't you love how good I am? You know, I guess that would be like the evil of the evil, right? The worst case scenario. But I don't see that same like fall in line and conform, right? That influence that others have had, right? Now, you know, and so then when I think about like, okay, well, you take out your middle class, and what benefit is that to the rich, to the wealthy, to the business owners, to the corporations when their consumers are these middle class? You know, so that's the angle that I'm having trouble seeing, right? If it is, man, why are you trying to cripple your middle class? Why are you trying to remove all these government jobs that, you know, that fuel? I would think that people like PG&E and, you know, and other major corporations that are making a whole lot of money off of middle class and lower class people, I would bet that I would imagine that they have a hitman ready to take this guy out, because the actions that this Doge are taking and the things that are being identified, that's taking money from these guys' pocket, these large corporations, right? Because it's government spending. You know, I saw that the Air Force had like 12 coffee mugs that cost $26,000, and they were like these like high tech like reheatable coffee mugs or whatever. $26,000, right? Now $26,000 is a drop in the bucket, but if we had a company and we were making, you know, $2,000 a coffee mug, we would be doing pretty well, right? And if we had that government contract, we'd be feeling pretty good about it, right? And so how many other contracts, 10 times, 100 times the money size exist out there that are looking to lose their contract, and how many people are pissed off about that?
Well, and it may be where they may be gaining additional contracts, because at the moment, it's not the government that does the work. They contract that out. And it happens in the military. I mean, airlines. I mean, not to name any specific airlines, but now NASA has been condensed all this research that they have, and they're practically transferring money over to possible SpaceX. It could be now Tesla may be the next vehicle that the government may be driving. I mean, education. There may be certain books that you may have to read that may come from this particular. Again, who's controlling that narrative? Who has the money to do such an influence? Is it you? Is it me? Is it the middle class?
But that exists now, though.
Well, no, yeah, but who actually has that influence? It's not. I don't think it's me.
But what I'm saying is, like, we can't say, oh, the government's doing these things so that they can drive Teslas, or like they're going to give Musk the contract and everybody have Teslas. I mean, you drive by any government, there's a bunch of Fords.
Of course.
And so who has that contract,
and
right?
that's what I'm trying to get at, is that those influences don't come from our level. Because we don't own those corporations. And I'm not saying that, oh, shame on you because you didn't work harder, you couldn't acquire that type of wealth to do it. Well, yeah, maybe shame on me. Maybe the opportunities didn't exist there. I'm not saying I should have those opportunities. I'm just saying these folks are in a position to do that. Yeah. They're in a position to do that. They're in a position to influence maybe favorable terms for them.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
And they always have been.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, like, when it comes down, like you brought up the Department of Education, like, teacher salaries, admin salaries, what's the benefit? And I don't ask the question to challenge you. It's like, I legit want to know so that I could try to piece this together myself and kind of take a stance on it. It's like, what would be the benefit of crippling your middle class? Because a teacher is never going to be, considered wealthy. They're never going to make 10% if they're just teaching, right? So they're always going to be within that bubble, right? Their salary is always going to max out within. But so to say, like, oh, we're going to eliminate that, and it's for my personal gain. Well, what gain is that? Because now you have somebody who is unable to go to the dinners, go to the fundraisers, go to the, drive a Tesla and, be a retail consumer, right? So that's where I'm kind of stuck. It's like, where does that...
And I just bring you back again to history because you may think that it's crippling them by saying, I'm taking that away from you. It's what you add to them. You're adding more consumer goods that we don't produce, but you're adding more consumer goods and other services that have gone up so much higher that it makes it hard for them to spend that extra dollar, to become, now it's a two household income. We look at it here, for example, and we talk about it all the time, is the affordability of a home, the affordability of cars. I mean, the affordability of eggs, for crying out loud. So those are impacts that the middle class will take now, and I'm sure in the future, because if you go back to the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and you go back through all these decades and you look at the cost of living, it's been very, very high in comparison to the wages that are being provided to keep up with that inflation. So it's not that how you would cripple them today, it's how we've done it, or how this government, I'm not saying if it's government or maybe our economy has done it to ourselves over the past. It's not a overnight or one president, two presidents. It's been decades. And if you look at these charts, you'll see the disparities that exist between inflation and or wages. And this is how you're crippling them, because now that teacher that once could be one household income has to be two just to keep afloat. And that makes it very difficult for them to teach, because if they're worried about their health, they're worried about their payments, because they're human just like you and I, but they have to make all these payments. And they may be struggling. And yet, we can't seem to put that at the center of like, hey, let's help these folks out. Instead, it's like these efficiencies that are not good.
So is it better to look the other way? Are you saying it's better to look the other way with inefficiencies, where there's inefficiencies?
No. I just don't think that we we really put a microscope on the other bigger issues where money is really leaking out, where we see a lot of this money, where we can see this other efficiency. And I think you talked about it earlier, is regarding certain deductions that are taken. There's a lot of money there that sometimes goes offshore. It's unreported. We don't see it in our economy here.
Well, we see
but I think if you approach it, and this is why Elon is one of the guys sitting next to him, is if you approach, like you said, the schools. Look at the space industry. Boeing, who has been the forefront in the last 15, 20 years, getting to get a module serviceable, so we don't have to basically ride on the Russian module. Billions wasted. They can't even get it done. Here comes Elon, in a short time frame, is able to build a rocket that's reusable at a fraction of the cost, and it's being used. It's done. He's getting it going, and I think that's the point you have to look at. It's not that. So you could take that same approach, saying, well, look at all the Boeing employees that are going to be fired. Yeah, because they were wasteful. There was billions being lost to a broken project. If you take the same project or the same mentality with education, you could say the same thing. It's not that we're going to want to lose teachers, but maybe you incentivize maybe that private sector schooling that comes around that can do it on a cheaper budget and provide better students and maybe better wages even to their teachers, because they have this. It's more of like a private sector mentality of cutting costs and efficiencies in my business. Because if I was a business owner, that's how I increase profitability. But when you have these government entities that could care less about profitability, the only thing they look at profitability is students and time in the chair. That's their profitability. That's why you get penalized for sending your kid or not sending your kid to school. That's why there's that, you better take your kid to school because they're losing money. But outside of that, they don't get a deduction if more kids fail next year. They don't see a deduction in wages if there's something like their whatever doesn't do as good. But if you had a private school that was based on their efficiencies and how many kids got A's and how many kids went to college and how well they competed, I guarantee you would have a program that would be better ran than your current program. And again, it's not to lose teachers. It's to say that you've been going on just like Boeing for too long in NASA, spinning wheels and money and not really producing because you really didn't have a competition. And now you have a competition, you're like, oh crap, we actually have to catch up a lot or else you're going to lose those contracts. And I think that's the point. That's why why you say he's next to him, because Elon has been doing that. He did it with the Tesla, and yet no politician would say the word Tesla. It was, Ford and GE, and look at all these guys, they're making electric cars. And he's like pumping them out. It's no different than what you have right now with NASA. So that's my point.
That's
and I'll end it on that.
That's a good point.
That is a good point. Was that a mic drop? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm out.
That's a good point.
So,
Rohi out.
anyways.
So let us know what you think out there. We've been talking about a few different topics. It depends on which video you click on.
There's three of them out there. Yeah, one of them has it.
Yeah. So we're going to continue to follow the national politics and see how all this unfolds, and hopefully. I think for everybody's sake, right, we hope that there is a true desire to see the economy be, or the country be ran more efficiently, but ultimately more effectively, that, better educates, better employs, better, houses, all of those things that the people can reap benefit from, right? I think we all want that. Mm-hmm. But it is our obligation as Americans, and it is in our Constitution to challenge when we feel that something isn't going right. We've to Jose's point, we have to rely on history, and we have to look at different trends, and we have to say, hey, wait, this looks a lot like that. We want to make sure that that's not where we're going, mm-hmm. right? And challenge. And I think that's what makes the United States great, is because us even being on the show challenging is our freedom to do so, right? We have the freedom of speech to do that. And who knows if miraculously our brakes don't work on the freeway, I don't know. Then you might want to start challenging. But no, we're given that freedom, that right to do that, that right to speak freely. And sometimes that right, gets, used in abundance. And that's where you see social media, all of these opinions pop up. But hey, that's America. That's what we're blessed to do.
Gives us an opportunity to chime in, again, express that freedom of speech that we have. So with that, I think that's all I have today. Rohi, is there anything else? Yeah. All right.
Hey, follow us next Wednesday. We'll see you. Any questions, comments, or or endorsements, go ahead and reach out to
Yeah, please